Hello everyone, welcome to another video. Today is going to be the introduction to microbiology and infectious diseases and the pathogenesis of an infection. So the classification of the microbial world, there are four types of main types of microbes. It's viruses, fungi, parasites and bacteria. So viruses is made of DNA or RNA. Fungi can be yeasts or molds, and parasites can be ecto or endo, and then also different types of bacteria. So if we look at bacteria error tolerance, there are four main types. It is obligate anaerobe, error tolerant, a facultative anaerobe, and a obligate aerobe. So an obligate anaerobe is a microorganism that can't survive with the presence of oxygen. Whereas error tolerant, it can survive with the presence of oxygen, but it's not ideal. And then a facultative anaerobe can survive with or without oxygen, but prefers oxygen. And then an obligate aerobe can only exist in the presence of oxygen. Okay, and then if we look at morphology, there are three main types. There are some different deviations as well. The three main types are bacilli, cocci, and spiral. Bacilli is like rod-shaped or oval-shaped, and then cocci is round, and spiral is spiral. And then also the two main types of stains are gram stains and acid-fast stains. Okay, so yeah, cocci once again is round, and you get it changed in clusters. Also like a hybrid between cocci and bacilli is known as coccobacilli. So it's not cocci bacilli, but coccobacilli. And you also get strange shapes of bacilli, such as that club-shaped form, this cuneiform. Then if you look at the staining, so you get gram-positive, gram-negative. There's a certain staining procedure, but gram-positive bacteria will stain purple, like these, and then gram-negative bacteria will stain red or pink. So yeah, if I look here, those are purple. So it's gram-positive, purple gram-positive, pink gram-negative. This is like an hybrid. Some of the bacteria are gram-positive, some of the bacteria are gram-negative. Gram-positive, gram-negative. And then this is an acid-fast stain actually. Okay, moving on. Then a typical bacterial cell is also important. It has a plasma membrane and a cell wall. Some of the bacteria have capsules, but not all. They also have pilies. Pilies are for attachment purposes, and then the flagellum is for locomotion purposes. Also has a plasmid. It's also important to note that when you're doing transformations with bacteria, it's the plasmid that carries the antibiotic resistance. And it also has DNA and ribosomes for protein synthesis. Okay, so let's look at the cell walls or the plasma membranes of gram-positive versus gram-negative cells, bacteria. So the first and the main difference between gram-positive and gram-negative is that gram-positive bacteria has a very thick peptidoglycan layer, whereas gram-negative bacteria has a very thin peptidoglycan layer and a periplasmic space. So that's the main difference between the two. That's why the one stains purple and the one stains pink. But also, gram-positive bacteria has a lipoic acids, whereas the gram-negative has polysaccharides or an O antigen. And also, the gram-negative bacteria has a lipoprotein, but the gram-positive doesn't have a lipoprotein. But both are have lipid bilayers and integral proteins within the membrane. So if you look at the differences here, so gram-positive has a thick peptidoglycan layer, gram-negative of course has a thin one. Gram-positive has the lipoic acids, whereas gram-negative has the O antigen. And yeah, gram positive doesn't have a lipoprotein, where gram negative has one, and both have lipid bilayers and integral proteins. Okay, then if you look at the pathogenetic triad, it's mainly composed out of three things. It's the microbe that will cause a disease or might cause a disease, then it's the host and the environment. Um, so all three of these can contribute to the pathogenicity of a microbe. If the host's defenses are well, or the host has good defense, so it's good in genetics mostly, then the microbes such as TB maybe won't cause a disease because of the host. But if the environment's bad, the host's genetic capacity is down, then the microbe may cause a disease, and it might be lethal. So both of these three components in the triad contributes to the pathogenicity of a disease. It's not only the microbe, but it's the environment and the host. So yeah, even microbes that are symbionts, such as Staphylococcus aureus or maybe even Escherichia coli, might cause diseases in the right circumstances when you have immune diseases such as HIV, or your immune is compromised due to another disease or due to malnutrition and things like that. Okay, so moving on. So the damage response framework. So what's important to know about the damage response framework is that a pathogen or microbe can cause damage to your organs, tissues, or cells through two ways. One is through the actual microbe causing damage to the tissue, and two is actually a host response. So it's host mediated damage, such as inflammation. That is like when the immune response is just too robust, and it actually will also cause damage. So it was also very important to treat inflammation, especially in the coronavirus and things like that. You should treat inflammation, because the host response might be so strong that it causes damage to the tissue. So yeah, you can see this is the graph going down here. This is a pathogen mediated, where the graph going up here, this is host mediated, where the body sees there's a problem and inhibits a response so strong that it causes damage to the tissue. Okay. Okay, and that's also just how we might get a disease. Is you get in contact with a disease, or with a pathogen, or with any microbe for that matter. And then also that microbes such as Staphylococcus aureus, or maybe Escherichia coli, or some of those bacteria, they can live in our bodies as symbionts. So both of them gets lives as symbionts within the body. So it can be commensalism. Or the infection can be eliminated. Infection can be eliminated, or colonization might occur, where there's colonies of these microbes building, and this can lead to an actual disease, or it can lead to persistence. This is where the elimination of the microbe from the body is equal to the microbes production within the body. So in TB and things like that, this also happens, is this persistent infection, you might say, but it is under control. But then once something happens, like the immune response is suppressed, then you might get a disease which might lead to damage, or to death, or whatever the case may be. Okay, then moving on. So there's also three definitions that you have to know. It's pathogenicity, and virulence. So a pathogen is a microbe with the ability to cause a disease or damage. Then virulence is it's the microbe severity. So it is the severity or the the harmfulness that the microbe possesses or the pathogen possesses. So it's how bad of an infection the microbe can cause. And then pathogenicity is just the property of causing a disease. So most microbes, or not most, but some microbes have the capacity to cause a disease, and therefore it's their pathogenicity. And also one can see here on a graph that here is the pathogen mediated damage, which goes down because it gets eliminated from the body or from medication or things like that. And this is the host mediated damage due to inflammation and things like that. So it's too strong of a immune response. So one can also see graph A, the person graph A is genetically or is more susceptible to this disease, because due to the fact that it hovers at the damaged site the whole time. It doesn't really gets better, whereas we can see seeds, not a lot of damage from the disease, and then it goes actually down into the negatives and then up again. So this is the host susceptibility, and there's a few factors that has a say in host susceptibility. So there's actually like an acronym for this, for host susceptibility, is misteaching. So the M stands for the microbiota or the microbiome. The I stands for immunity. The S stands for the gender or the sex. The T stands for temperature. The E stands for environment. The A stands for the age of the patient. The C stands for chance. The I stands for the inoculum, how much of the microbe is ingested or is in contact with you. And the N is for nutrition, and the G is your genetic capacity. So that's the attributes to host susceptibility. That's what contributes to how ill you might get from a specific microbe or pathogen. Okay, so considering outcomes of different hosts. So once you can see here, this person here has AIDS. Then he's getting infected with a Staphylococcus cerevisiae, which is also it's actually a symbiont, so it shouldn't actually cause a disease, but because of this person is genetically or as a non-effective immune response due to the HIV or AIDS virus, the body will eliminate the virus. And so this is the damage caused by the pathogen itself, and then here is the result due to the host mediated damage. And then allergy and inflammation will occur at the top. And if you look at TB, the same will happen, but it will cause a disease if there is too big of an immune response, called caseous necrosis. And then also the hepatitis C virus, but you can also see the severity, because here the patient is for long healthy under the damaged site, where here it's a little bit less with the TB, and then with the hepatitis C it's even less, and it will cause a disease like a carcinoma. Those mediated response will cause a disease called a carcinoma. Okay, then moving on. Here's the same thing. So a person has miliary TB, but also HIV. So antiretroviral treatment will be given. The body will then begin to eliminate the disease, which will lead to the decrease in damage. When it's eliminated, or almost close to eliminated, then the immune response might get strong and will cause inflammation and also damage to the tissues. So once here again, it's also malaria, it's TB, but it's treated with the right microbial. This person doesn't have HIV, in order to eliminate the TB, but also it will create this host-mediated damage. Okay, and then this person will be treated with corticosteroids, which will reduce inflammation, and antimicrobials to get rid of the TB. And then also it's important to know what a host is. A host is an entity that is associated with a microbiome or microbiota. It interacts with microbes, responds to them in a way that results in damage, benefit, or indifference, thus producing the states of disease, symbiosis, colonization, commensalism, and latency. So, thank you for listening to this video. It's the introduction to microbiology.